Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. I've been doing this show for a long time, and this is the episode I am absolutely most excited about. We have today a guest I've been after for 20 years, the woman who inspired my name, Lora Logic. Lora, for those who don't know, was the saxophonist for the legendary punk rock band X-Ray Spex. They are the quintessential old school British punk band whose legacy carries on today due to the brilliant songwriting of the late singer Polystyrene. After getting booted out of X-Ray Spex, Get Out, she formed her solo band Essential Logic, then had a solo album as Lora Logic, left the scene, joined the Hare Krishnas, and now after 40 years is releasing a new album called Land of Kali, which is out now.
Yes.
43 years. Yes, thank you. So my first question I was going to ask you was, so you kind of vanished, you weren't on the internet, and I'd look for you every so often. And then I saw you on Instagram, and you had an account, and I followed you and I messaged you. And the first question I was going to have is, what's it like being a punk rock mom, right? So there were two scenarios, one of which is, oh, mom, tell me about the time Billy Idol spit in your face. Or it was like, oh, God, mom, no one cares about your old dinosaur stories. But your daughter's the one who got you on Instagram. She's in your video with you. She's the one who's been encouraging you with music. What's that like being a punk rock mom?
Well, as you said, I wasn't a punk rock mum for about 20 years.
Yeah.
So the last few years, it's been really nice because I've been collaborating with my daughter. She has a beautiful voice, very different to mine, very powerful and strong. She's been at drama school. She's done voice training, and it's been a way to really bond with her as an adult, to connect with her. And it was very intense also, mother and daughter, having her come in lockdown and engineering her. And she probably spent about 20 minutes just doing the vocals on any given song. But then I'd spend maybe a week and a half editing them because she did so many takes. And but it's been great. I just the contrast of the voices on the album, the incredible mood that her voice brings. I think you've heard the new album, haven't you?
Yeah, of course. I love it. That I had that your first single, Alien Boys, on repeat at the gym. It's so I will get to the new album in a second, but it's very different from your older stuff because Essential Logic, and I don't want to step on toes if I'm mischaracterizing it, seemed very much of the time that post-punk, almost, kind of there's some elements of amelodic harshness, and this one album seems much more, accessible and poppy.
Yeah. Well, I guess so. I mean, I pretty much engineered most of it, especially in lockdown. And it was really a result of the ingredients that I could muster up on my own, never having used computer software before, never really having used a computer before. It was a first on so many levels. A Mac computer came into the house, and then I just grabbed it. It came in at the right time. I was on the phone to Apple support 24/7, learning how to use GarageBand and just navigating my way through so many different tunnels in lockdown. And then I had the unexpected delight of maybe receiving a guitar track from youth unexpectedly in the morning, and everything just came together spontaneously, but when it needed to. Yeah, it was just very spontaneous.
Okay, what I wanted to ask you about was, so I think people, because you were one of the eyewitnesses to the punk scene in the 70s in Britain, and I think people have all I know about is from what I've read in books. So I want to hear, your perspective. So the impression I had is that Britain in the 70s was a very kind of dark place. When the Sex Pistols sang about "There is no future in England's dreaming," you had people don't know this. Even my friend who's British doesn't know this. You had problems even having electricity. The garbage in Leicester Square is 2 meters high. The hospital workers were on strike. Inflation was through the roof. There just seemed to be no hope. And a large part of that punk scene was this reaction to this country on its last legs. Is that portrayal accurate of that era?
Well, I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about the fact that I was only 15 years old when I was in X-ray Spex. So I can't say I was overly aware of all these things going on around me. What I do remember is things like maybe 1,000 punks walking down the King's Road with all of its elite fashionable stores and bricks. It was half fun. The punks were just out being punks, dressing up and shocking everyone. But simultaneously, bricks were thrown through the windows. And then there was,
wow.
Yeah, as a demonstration of the haves and the have-nots. And then there was the whole thing with the Teds being very upset with the punks.
Wait, let me interrupt you because Americans don't understand this because it sounds so crazy. But in Britain at the time, there were these teddy boys who were like upper middle class and they dressed really nice, but they'd go on the street and beat the crap out of people. It's like the opposite of Antifa almost.
Yeah, again, I was very young, so I didn't know too much about the teddy boys scene. I just knew that they didn't like, some of them didn't like punks because punks borrowed some of their dress styles. And they thought, how dare they? We're the Teds and only we can dress like this. Those kind of crossovers, you know, some of the punks would have that teddy boy squiff hairstyle and wear the sort of same shoes. I forget what they're called, those spongy high shoes. So they really didn't like that. They wanted to keep their club intact. And the punks just enjoyed being punky about everything, including winding up the Teds. So I remember on the King's Road, I remember seeing clashes between the Teds and the punks. I remember the bricks being thrown through windows. But other than that, I don't remember too much about the political scene. Obviously, it was reflected in the music and the bands. And there seemed a lot of friction at the time. Which is very much part of the punk, the whole punk ethos initially. I couldn't really comment more than that on the political scene at the time.
So how were you at 15 years old, like at the Roxy playing your saxophone? I mean, where were mom and dad? This just seems like such a crazy situation.
Mom and dad came to
that's so cute.
My first gig at the Roxy. And I was so worried about them. I was really, really worried they were going to get lynched, knifed. My dad came in a very smart coat, and my mum wore her best evening dress. And I basically approached them. I said, I think you need to leave here as soon as possible. Not only was I as embarrassed as hell, but I thought they were treading in deep waters. I mean, nobody looked like that in the Roxy Club. So they came and they left quickly. But they were proud of me in a funny kind of way. And they liked Polly. They liked her performance. They liked everything about her. She was very charismatic to all kinds of people.
So you were in the band for about a year before, and you were getting a lot of attention because to have a punk band with a saxophone player was kind of very innovative. The sax was so kind of aggressive and set the tone for so many of the songs. And then things were going well, the band's blowing up, and then you get a call, you get a face-to-face, and she's telling you, thank you, your services no longer be required. Can you talk about that?
It wasn't quite like that. I remember it was early summer. It had been a few weeks since the last rehearsal, and the band was on the up and up. Bondage Up Yours was released, and we were just going from one gig to the next. The Roxy, Man in the Moon, the Vortex, sort of edgy punk London venues. But then there was a big gap and there was no rehearsal. I thought, this is really strange. So I rang the manager up, Falcon, and I said, when's the next rehearsal? How come things have been so quiet? And he said, oh, didn't you know we've found a new sax player?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just like that. So I said, oh, no, how would I know? How would I know? So he said, yeah, we had to do it. You know, it's for the best of the band. And so the long and short of it was that Polly was convinced that I was a black witch and I was casting magic spells on her. And her mental instability, her bipolar kind of, in my observation, it started to kick in then. And some people say it was triggered by, there was one review in Sounds newspaper which said the sax is X-ray Spex. The sax sound is X-ray Spex, and Polly's having to work so hard because Lora Logic is stealing the show. And it got to her. It triggered something in her insecurities, all the stuff she'd been through in her childhood, so many other things. So I had to go, and the manager didn't really care too much about diplomacies or details. The band had to go on, and he said, we've replaced you with a subdued male saxophonist. So that's the way it happened.
So, I mean, but you're so young. I mean, as a kid, you're going from being on stage, getting all this attention, and now it's what, I mean, how did that feel? That must have been kind of devastating.
Yeah, it was. It was at the time. It was my teenage dream, of course, to be in X-ray Spex, and my bubble was sharply burst. So I was upset. I cried. And then I put my sax down, and I didn't really want to play it for quite a while after that. I just spent the summer just chilling. I think I might have even gone to Russia that summer with my parents, because my mum comes from Finland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think we may have visited Finland that summer. I remember going to Russia for one day. Side note. So yeah, so that was it. But I didn't want to have anything more to do with the music scene or the music business. That's how I felt when I was 15.
Hey guys, we have a new client with amazing extreme altitude wines from the Bonner Private Wine Partnership. Just had a bottle of their 9,000 foot Malbec at a party I threw. Everyone seemed to enjoy it. It's grilling season. Flavors go great with any meat you're going to have. They're unlike any wine you've ever tasted. They've got blackberry, leather, smoke, and a little dark cherry in the notes. These wines are almost impossible to get on your own. The producers are deep in the Andes Mountains, and they make a limited quantity. And the best part is Bonner Private Wines cuts out the middleman, so there's no large markup. Today, I have an amazing introductory offer. If you visit bonnerprivatewines.com/Michael, you'll not only get wine for 50% off plus free shipping, you'll also get a bonus bottle of small batch, limited production wine from their exclusive wine cellar. That's 4 bottles for the price of 3. It's a deal that's hard to turn down if you're a wine lover. Just visit bonnerprivatewines.com/Michael to claim your bonus bottle and become a part of America's most unique wine club. Hey guys, your welcome is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Let's face it, sometimes multitasking can be overwhelming. Like when your favorite podcast is playing and the person next to you is talking and your car fan is blasting, all while you're trying to find the perfect parking spot. But then again, sometimes multitasking is easy, like quoting with Progressive Insurance. They do the hard work of compare rates so you can find a great rate that works for you, even if it's not with them. Give their nifty comparison tool a try. You might just find getting the rate and coverage you deserve is easy. All you need to do is visit Progressive's website to get a quote with all the coverages you want, like comprehensive and collision coverage or personal injury protection. Then you'll see Progressive's direct rate, and their tool will provide options from other companies all lined up and ready to compare, so it's simple to choose the rate and coverages you like. Press play on comparing auto rates, quote, at progressive.com to join the over 27 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. Let's get back to the show. So all the saxophone parts on the album, it's funny, so your band, X-Ray Spex specifically, I found them right at that age when you start finding music, you know what I mean? And there's that period, that little window you have maybe between like 16 and 20 where you're first discovering music, and when you find those bands, they kind of mean something to you for the rest of your life, like kind of almost out of proportion. And I remember very vividly, I was listening to the CD in college and my roommate walked in and he said, "How can you listen to this? It just sounds like people screaming." So, but the thing is, there was this kind of very melodic aspect to it as well, besides the the harshness of the vocals and the kind of the aggressiveness of the sax. Can you talk a bit about how the songs were written and put together?
Yeah, sorry, which song would you be referring to exactly?
Well, just the whole album, but like songs like "Oh Bondage Up Yours," I mean, that's so, and "The Day the World Turned Day Glow," those were so kind of very in your face, like almost, there's this almost cacophonous element to it as well.
Yeah, well, I just went to the first audition and then we started practicing. At the beginning, there was just Polly and me, and there was a drummer and a bass player. I think the bass player was called Valhalla, and I think they were from New York.
Oh,
but they were older. And they looked great. They looked like they should have been in the Stooges or something, but they were too old for the band. So they had to go. And so there was a few changes in lineup in the beginning, but it was very spontaneous. I mean, we just started rehearsing, and I remember the manager, Falcon, he was just there ogling us as we played, and would say like, "Oh, a bit more power there," or "a bit more power here," and it just came together so quickly. Those first songs that are on the album, right, really from the first rehearsal. I mean, I was amazed. I had no experience. It's the first band I was in, but I was amazed how quickly the chemistry was incredible right from the beginning. I wouldn't say there was any formula or process for arranging those songs. Polly just sang the melody. I came up. Well, actually, Polly's melodies, and a lot of them were quite monotone. So from my perspective as a sax player, that was good because I could be more melodic.
yeah.
You didn't have two melodies clashing with each other. And that's what I loved about her singing. It was this real sort of powerhouse, often quite monotone singing. Yeah, so that left me space for melodies. And I didn't really think if the melodies suited the style of music or not. I just heard the melodies and I played them, and it was just spontaneous. There was no academic observation or anyone else really saying you should do it like this or you should do it like that. It just really spontaneously combusted from the beginning. It just worked really well.
How did you come up with the name Lora Logic?
Oh, that's a nice story. We were on our way to the first gig, and we were in the manager's car, and there was a journalist sitting on the front seat, and then Polly and I were in the back, and she was kind of doing the interview as we were going along to the first gig, and she said, "What's your name?" Polly. And she said she'd already thought Polystyrene. So my name's Polystyrene. And she said, "What's your name?" So I didn't have a name. So I just, top of my head, I just thought Emily d'Ange, like Emily of the Angels, because I think I knew that d'Ange was angels in French, Emily of the Angels. And then Polly looked at me like, "What? You can't, that's like soft, that's like hippie. You know, Emily of the Angels. So then she said, think of something else. So I thought, oh my, what am I going to think of? And I remember in school I'd read a book by James Joyce in an English lesson, and I remember there was that word logic in it. I don't know why I popped into that. There was the word essential, and then there was the word logic. Somehow or another just came into my mind. And then I just thought, Lora Logic. Just popped in. So that was it. They just stuck.
Um, can you so what kind of what bands were you both influenced by at that era? Because it was such an innovative movement and such in many ways, like you were saying, a reaction to this kind of prog rock and this over the top, Johnny Rotten joined the Sex Pistols, or Sid, one of them, because they were wearing a shirt that said "fuck Pink Floyd," and they're like, "All right, I want you in the band." Can you talk a bit about what you guys were consuming, consciously consuming, maybe?
Mm-hmm. What you mean, poly and I, or just generally? I remember at Polly's there was a lot of there was roots reggae, Tapazuki. She liked that, Bob Marley, and then Tamala. She liked. I think she was quite influenced by Diana Ross and the Supremes.
Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah. But it was mainly reggae, to be honest. But we didn't really. I don't remember sitting that often with her and just listening to music. The time I did spend with her was at her Kings Road market store. She had a little fashion. She really liked to design clothes with her friend Sophie. I remember sitting there at her Kings Road market store. But we didn't spend that much time listening to music.
What was it like, being that young and trying to navigate, the music scene with your subsequent work? Because the music industry is notorious for being exploitative, and kind of having these contracts to take advantage of people. What was that experience like for you back then?
I was fortunate because after Essential Logic was formed, pretty much the whole time that I was making records and gigging, we were with Rough Trade Records, and Jeff Travis. So Jeff was more like a father figure. It was like a family. You walked into the Rough Trade shop, the Rough Trade offices. There's always a wholesome meal waiting for you, and it was the complete opposite experience to the experience I'd had in X-Ray Spex. I think everybody will vouch for that. The atmosphere at Rough Trade was amazing. They really cared for you as people. Jeff would always say, "How are you? You okay? Are you eating properly?" I wasn't eating properly. I lived in a squat. We didn't have a kitchen or a bathroom. But he was very caring. It's more like a father than a record company director.
So how did that end up happening? How do you end up going from, mom and dad are going to your first show to now you're living in a squat, without a bathroom?
Well, I formed Essential Logic when I was still living at home. I was auditioning members in my parents' garage, and we rehearsed in the garage. And then one day I just left. Well, it wasn't very nice. I left when they were on holiday.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It wasn't nice, but I couldn't, I didn't want to freak them out. They wanted me to go to university and marry a doctor or a lawyer.
Wait, hold on. You didn't want to freak them out, so you just left when they were on vacation. Okay.
It wasn't great. I mean, we stayed in touch.
Okay.
But, it wasn't great for them. So, yeah. And then soon after that, I was living in squats like so many other musicians at the time. And I was just pretty much for the 3 years before Essential Logic disbanded, I was very much busy the whole time with that, either gigging, touring, recording, or rehearsing. Yeah, it was my whole life really at that time.
But can you just, I mean, I think it's kind of, what's that like, living that kind of lifestyle? I mean, is it fun? Is it, it can't be, it's not nice, certainly.
Well, I wasn't there that much of the time. As I said, because I was busy. We had, I lived on the top floor, and then the middle floor, we had a friend called Jerry who was a DJ, and we didn't have record players, only he had a record player with huge speakers. So I just remember loud music being played the whole time till about 2-3 in the morning. And Stuart Moxham from the Young Marble Giants, he lived in the basement with his dog. And there was 3 other members of Essential Logic that lived in that house. It was fine. We didn't have any bills to pay.
Sure.
And everyone else in the street lived in squats as well. I didn't really know any different. It was just great. Didn't have to find any rent. Didn't have that much money coming in. Didn't have to worry about any bills.
So there was this kind of, sense of community that kind of kept everyone going.
Yeah, I'd say that was coming. Yeah, that was coming from 2 places. That was coming from Rough Trade. There was so many bands on Rough Trade, and most of the gigs we did were with other Rough Trade bands. We did that first Rough Trade tour with Stiff Little Fingers, Robert Rental, and the Normals. So we were mainly mixing with other musicians on Rough Trade records. Yeah, so it was there. It was in the squat. I don't think I knew anyone that didn't live in a squat at that time.
Oh, okay.
So it was just, that was it.
How do you go from living in a squat and having this kind of post-punk, like heavily reggae influenced band, to joining the Hare Krishnas?
Okay, so one day I was on Portobello Road, and I was actually making a film at the time. I'd been asked to be in a film called Crystal Gazing. So I was making a film, and when I was making the film, I saw my old best school friend on Portobello Road with a sari, with tilak, clay markings, Ganges markings on her forehead, jumping up and down like a mad hatter and singing Hare Krishna. And previously, she'd been a hardcore punk, she'd been on heavy drugs, she'd been so down, she'd always suffered from depression. So I saw her like that. And then, I don't know, it just shocked me. I was so shocked. I didn't know anything about Hare Krishnas. So I thought I should go and visit her at the temple. She's living at the London temple. I went to visit her there, and that was the first time I contacted the Hare Krishnas. And I loved it from that first visit, everything about it, the food, the atmosphere, most of all the people, because I thought it was amazing that anyone could be happy without drugs or alcohol. Right. So the people, they were so happy. They had light shining from their bodies. And there was a part of me that even when I was performing, I was always thinking, because I'm quite shy by nature, and I was always thinking, there must be something that I can take to make me feel totally uninhibited and at one with the audience as a communicator. There must be something I can take. And I kind of felt it when I walked into the temple. So yeah, I started visiting. I was very attracted by the philosophy. There was an introductory talk about the Bhagavad Gita every day at lunchtimes. So I'd go for that sometimes, and then fill bags full up of fruit halva and food, and I would live on that for the next 3 days. And I was exuberant. I was happy. I felt like this is how I want to live. I want to live like this one day. So I've been visiting a few months, and then in the meantime, I was recording Pedigree Charm, my last solo album, in Brixton, surrounded by heavy rastas, lots of drugs, and where we recorded it didn't even have windows. And I was in there for 9 months. It was an old meat fridge, and it was a dark atmosphere. The music was exciting. I was very happy to be working with incredible musicians like Charlie Hayward on drums, and Phil Legg is a genius. He engineered, and he was the guitarist in Essential Logic. But still, it was kind of dark and depressing. Anyway, one day we were in some Rasta's house, and we were passing around some very heavy grass, and I just had an epileptic fit.
Oh,
yeah, it was very bad, and I just.
Was that your first time experiencing an attack of epilepsy, or was it just a reaction to the drugs?
No, I think it was a reaction. It was a reaction. Oh. It was a reaction to the drugs, and my health was pretty bad. I wasn't conscious at all of eating, or I didn't know you had to drink water. I didn't know you had to eat fruit, basic things. Just grab things here and there. We didn't have a kitchen. We didn't have a fridge. We just grab a bit of white bread and grab bits here and there. So I think after 3.5 years of living like that, my health was quite low. So probably it wasn't very difficult to have a fit or a seizure triggered, but the dope was strong too. So I started shaking, and I just remember propelling across the floor, and there's about 3 or 4 other people there. And no one hardly noticed that I'd fallen to the floor and I was shaking. I remember that, just lying there shaking and looking up, and they were still sitting there. Then somehow or another, they realized there's something wrong with Lora, and they carried me upstairs. It was I remember it clear as day what happened. They laid me on this, it was in another squat, laid me on a stark wooden bed. I lay there, and then next thing I remember, I'd left my body, and I'd risen, and I was just looking down on this shaking body. I was petrified. I thought that was it. It was over, and I was alone. They went back downstairs. They seemed to go on forever. And then I just thought that was it. I'm going somewhere else. I'm not going to be able to go back into my body. And of course, I realized then I was separate from the body. So many people have this experience. They leave their bodies in different situations. But I'd been visiting the temple for a few months, and I had strong faith in Krishna. I knew if there was a God, if there was a supreme person, it was probably Krishna, because he was just beautiful, and he played a flute, and he was a fun God. And I started talking to him. I said, "Please, Krishna, if I get my act together, please put me back in my body. Will you put me back in my body?" And so then I recovered. But I decided my life had to change after that. So that was really a significant factor in changing my lifestyle and starting a new chapter.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge wake-up call for anybody. Hello, guys. Michael Malice here, underwear model to the stars. If you want to get inside my pants, you want to wear Sheath underwear. If you go to sheathunderwear.com and use promo code Malice, MALICE, you get 20% off. What's great about Sheath, and I wear them every day, is they've got this dual pouch technology, because there's one pouch for one part of your male anatomy, another pouch for another part of your male anatomy. First time you try them on, you're getting all your hands in there. You're like, this is weird. And from then on, you're like, oh, this is the most comfortable underwear I will ever wear. It's got added comfort, added performance, added mobility. And there's something a little subversive about talking to someone while the whole time your underwear is cupping your junk. I'm not going to lie. I do enjoy that aspect of it. If you go to sheathunderwear.com and use promo code Malice, you get 20% off your underwear, including my underwear. That's sheathunderwear.com and use promo code Malice, MALICE, for 20% off. Let's get back to the show. So did you just move? It was like the policy that anyone could just move into the temple if they felt like it?
Yeah. Yeah, if you wanted to go, and it's still the same. If you want to go into a temple and you want to study, try it out, spend a night, spend whatever, however much time you want to spend there, do an introductory course. But because my friend was already living there, I moved in and she was there, and then we were living in that very small London temple together. And not long after that, someone told me that Polystyrene was visiting as well. So that was weird. And then I realized, well, I had to be friends with her again after all that we've been through. But that's another story.
I mean, since she never really told you were fired and you never got a chance to say goodbye, was it awkward running into her again, or had you seen her in the interim or communicate anyway since?
No, we not communicated at all. But another funny thing, my best friend moved into the temple, and then her best friend, who we call Mad Mary in the punk days, she was hardcore punk. She moved into the temple too. She'd been there about a year when I moved in, and she was living at George Harrison's country temple estate in Hertfordshire, which wasn't very far. And she was the first person to invite me there. So I think she knew that Polly was visiting, and she knew that I was there. And somehow or another, I think she tried to arrange for us to meet, even though when I was first told that, oh, no way. No way. God, sister, no way. I didn't want to get burnt again. But we did, yeah. We met, and then it was just like, didn't matter, didn't matter what had gone on. Before we changed, she changed.
There was a documentary about her that her daughter Celeste made called, I'm a Cliche, which I watched, and it was interesting. The thing that struck me, and Polly passed not that long ago, so we don't want to speak too ill of the dead, but she talked about growing up with a mom who is bipolar, and there were some very dark scenes in that movie where she talked about like waking up to find her mom yelling at her at the foot of the bed, or throwing her down the stairs, which was kind of very disturbing to see. Was that kind of thing something that affected I know that obviously affected your relationship with her on the Reunion album. Can you speak a little about that? Because at this one hand, you're dealing with someone who on some level is a kind person and extremely talented and unique person. On the other hand, when you're dealing with mental illness, there's this other side, and you have to kind of ask yourself, which is real.
Yeah, it was never easy having any kind of dealings with her, especially after X-ray Spex, because I wanted things to be, when we first met, we were buddies before the symptoms of bipolar came on. I mean, when I first went to the audition and she opened the door and she had this beautiful, big, charismatic smile on her face, and we were both wearing the same clothes and everything. And, I just felt like I'd always known her. I really felt a past life connection with her. There was no introductions, nothing. We were just buddies until the time when I was asked to leave. We were close. We were very close. We did many things together. We had so much fun. So again, there'd be times like that when we were living together in the temple for many years. when we were very close. And then there'd be other times, like, since you mentioned making that Conscious Consumer album, she was living outside. She only stayed in the temple about a year
Oh, okay.
because of her medical condition. It wasn't really suitable for her, and she wanted to have her own place, her independence, and she knew that she needed medical help, but she couldn't always get living inside the temple community. Although she got a lot of support, especially in raising her daughter, from the community. But yeah, she just rang me up one day when she was living outside. It must have been about, I think it was 92, 93 that album came out. And she said, how'd you like to make another album? So every time she'd speak to me, I'd try and get my senses out, my antennae. What channel is she on? What kind of conversation is this going to be? Because she used to ring me. She used to ring me up in the middle of the night throughout the years, just freaking out and saying that this person was a wizard or a witch and they put a spell on her, similar to what I've been through. So in very strange moods. So I was also always worried, but then she said, shall we make a new album? And I went, bing, because the music was always so great. And she said, she told me, yeah, there's a studio and producer, and the songs were there. And would I like to go and stay with her for a week? So I just took a risk. I took a gamble, as I often did with her. And I went to stay with her, and it was okay for one day. And it was all right when we were in the studio because there was other people there.
Yeah.
Even though it got a bit weird in the studio after a couple of days. But I love the songs, and I was happy with the sax arrangements that I managed to put down. But then, yeah, she'd start again. Very strange again. And when I was out of the room, she'd started saying crazy things about me to the other people, like, did they know what I was doing? And did they know what I was really like? All this stuff. So it was difficult. And it's very difficult living with her also in her small flat. She wouldn't sleep. She didn't sleep at night. And then I knew it wasn't going to end well. It didn't really end too well. Still, the album managed to get finished and recorded, but she wasn't able to really do anything with it after it was done.
A large part of the Hare Krishna philosophy is not harming others, any other living thing, right? And obviously that informs, you're vegetarian, so on and so forth. How does that feel as someone who is guided by that kind of faith? How do you feel when you hear someone who you're friends with accusing you of, just being this kind of malevolent, evil being? It seems very hurtful, especially so.
Well, by then, I knew, she was bipolar, and I was more than aware.
Okay.
Of her medical condition. I mean, even when we lived in the temple, I don't know if I should be saying all these things, but sometimes they'd find her in the temple room with no clothes on, and so I'd seen a lot with her.
Okay.
So I knew exactly. She was either a little bit okay. She was never fully okay. But she was either a little bit okay temporarily, or she was completely deranged. So I thought, it's okay. If she's a little bit okay, it's fine. We can relate. But then I had to distance myself from her when she just kept ringing me up in the middle of the night with these wild scenarios.
I don't remember if it was in the book or the documentary, but there was a reference to you had an X-ray Spex reunion without her. which is almost like having a Blondie show without Debbie Harry. Can you explain? I'd never even heard of this. Can you explain the thinking there and who was the singer?
Yeah, that was just a very brief, weird thing. I was just approached by a lady whose name shall remain anonymous.
Okay.
I didn't know much about her at the time. Had I known more about her, I wouldn't even have consented. But Paul was involved and Jack, the guitarist, was involved. So I thought it's an X-Ray Spex thing. And we thought that Polly wasn't well enough to join us at the time. And we were just going to do a few gigs. And then, as I remember, we were told she couldn't join us. She couldn't join us because she wasn't well enough. And then this other singer, who shall remain nameless, joined us. And we just did a few gigs. It's really quite bizarre. And we thought maybe Polly would slot in.
Oh, okay.
But she didn't. It was kind of a strange fabrication. Luckily, it didn't last very long.
But you were performing under the name X-Ray Spex?
Yeah.
Okay.
We only did, I don't know, 2 or 3.
Oh, okay.
Gigs. It wasn't a major thing. We never recorded anything. It was just a strange escapade. And no, you could never have X-Ray Spex without Polly.
Yeah. Can you what did you think of the documentary?
Yeah, I thought it was good. It was refreshingly honest. I've known Celeste since she was a baby.
Yeah.
Because I used to help look after her when Polly wasn't able to in the temple. And she's a good friend. We did a long interview. In fact, the first interview that I did with her for that film was really the first time I connected back into anything movie-like or music-like after many, many years. She called me for an interview in the West End. And it was incredible therapy just to talk. I hadn't connected with my past.
Yeah.
For many, many years, I'd literally been living another life, and not a Lora Logic life. It was a different life. It was a mum life. It was just a kind of normal life. Not that Lora Logic isn't normal. Actually, I feel Lora Logic is more me than maybe a mum, or, you know.
Yeah.
We all have our natural propensities and our different parts of our psyche that we connect with as being us. So sorry, what was the question?
We were talking about the documentary and talking to Celeste and getting interviewed for it.
Yeah. So then I met her. We had a lovely interview for the book and for the film with Zoe Howe and Celeste. And it was lovely. It was lovely to be part of that. When I watched it, I just cried. I cried and cried. It's very moving, and I think it's lovely. It's very, very honest.
Yeah, it was tough to watch because just hearing someone, because she, Celeste, Polly's daughter, who's the filmmaker, you have this kind of, you have this relationship with two people where she recognizes that her mom is this kind of musical trailblazer and icon, but at the same time, this is the mom who's, in some ways, like literally terrorizing her. And, watching her try to struggle herself with these relationships with these two people is something, I don't know that I'd wish that on anyone. When you hear about, kids suffering, I think that's for many people, especially myself, is just kind of a bridge too far. It's very hard to hear.
Yeah, definitely. I remember Celeste going through different portions of her life. I remember when I visited Polly and she was living in this bare warehouse, and Celeste was just a little baby. And Polly, it was just her and her mum, and she was trying to give her bottled milk, and she just couldn't keep it together. She didn't sleep, and it was really, I think if the social services had come in way before Celeste submitted herself to them, she would have been removed. Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
This is Walk-Ins Welcome with Bridget Fetisi.
I love hearing people's stories of resilience and grit. This is why I created this podcast.
We are very excited to welcome Jim Gaffigan, Yasmin Mohammed, Glenn Beck, Tim Dillon, Abigail Schreier, Jeff Garland, Ayan Hirsi Ali, Sam Harris, Heather Hying, Jonah Goldberg, Ben Shapiro, Glenn Greenwald, Sarah Shahi, Colin Quinn.
If there's a culture of victimhood, then let's tell stories of grit and survival.
Subscribe and listen now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
So now I have to ask, now that you're a mom, right? Is it kind of the thing where if like your daughters get into trouble, you kind of roll your eyes? Because it's like, look, you're not in a squat having epileptic seizures. If you want to go out and have a beer, I don't care. I've seen it all.
Yeah, I don't interfere. I don't interfere with Marlene. She's way beyond that, and she's done 3 years living away from home at drama school, and I think she's amazing. I think she's much more mature than I was. At her age, she's incredibly talented. I don't know what else to say. What was your question?
Yeah, just like, I mean, the fact that you had such a, if you're living for 3 years without a fridge or a bathroom, right? And, you're around heavy drugs, you're around the punk scene. It seems that it's going to be, obviously any mom's going to worry about her kids, but it's like, listen, you've survived so much worse that no matter what she's going through, you could kind of almost yawn about it.
Yeah. Maybe in some respects. I mean, of course, she's going through the same kind of things that I went through. On one level, she's experimenting like everyone does.
Sure, of course, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's experimenting. But she has the different. I was quite protected in one sense that music. I've always been very passionate. If I'm doing music, that's all I do, and I just completely throw myself into it. So, okay, yeah, I did, it was a bit drugs and rock and roll-ish, but that's all I did. So I had something to fix my mind on. It's more dangerous, isn't it? Now, well, just generally, I think there were more options then.
Yeah.
Well, of course, we've been through lockdown and everything, but I feel really sorry for this new generation in the way that the world is. It felt like a freer time in many ways then. So I worry more about that.
I see. Okay.
The state of the world than what she's doing as a young person.
There's something I think Americans don't know, and I would love to hear you talk about this because I'm sure you experienced it. In the punk scene, if the audience liked the band, they would spit on them, gobbing, and you would leave the stage just covered like with spit. I mean, how did you not all get hepatitis?
It's a good job COVID wasn't. We didn't even think about it. There's so many things going on. Yeah. Yeah. It was a sign that they liked you, so we tolerated it. It got to Polly. Polly didn't.
Of course, yeah.
She hated it. When she came off stage, it was like, ugh. I had a Mac on.
Yeah.
My full-length Mac. So I was well prepared. Yeah, but it was horrible, yeah. Getting gob spit down your saxophone. Just wipe it out with a hanky and carry on.
What made you decide after all this time to get back into music and release a new album?
Yeah, a few things. I mean, Malini, my daughter, she was telling me for a while, you know, we're grown up now. I'm grown up now. What are you going to do? And you should, you know, you should get back into your music. So she just set up an Instagram account for me, and simultaneously at that time, an old keyboardist friend invited me around for a cup of tea, and she would say the same thing. She'd been playing for years and very talented musician. An old friend who I hadn't actually seen for quite a long time. So I went round, had a cup of tea with her, and she said, I'm going to take you round right now to my friend who lives around the corner, who I've been playing in a band with for the last few years. And I'm going to introduce you to him because you need to start making music again. So I protested and said, no, I'm not ready for it. You know, I know, because I knew that if I got back into music, that's it. It would completely take over. It'd be my whole life. And I had songs. I always had songs in my notebooks, and I just didn't really think I was ready for it. But she did. She put me in the car. She took me around. We went to see Jorge Morales, this wonderful South American musician, who had a little bedroom recording studio with a rusty old Fostex 16-track. Even not all the tracks worked on it. They were clogged up. But that's it. With that first meeting, I started singing a song, a back burner song, and Hare played some keyboards, and that's it. Tape recorder went on, and we started recording. And yeah, that was the beginning of the Land of Kali album.
The box set's coming out as well, simultaneously with the album. What's it like after all this time, you know, to listen to music that you made when you were still so young? I mean, is it something that it's just like, hey, because when I read some of my old books, which I rarely do, you know, I'm like, oh, you know what? I did pretty good, because by the time it's in book form, you've read it 12 times. So the mistakes that you remember aren't there. And you're like, oh, you know what? This is not so bad. What's your relationship like to hearing your old albums?
Well, I couldn't listen to Beat Rhythm News or any bootleg demos from that era for years and years. And as a mum with young kids, my kids would just laugh themselves silly when they heard anything. Did I tell you about Albert? I played Albert to Marlene when she was 6 years old, and she went into uncontrollable hysterics and just peed herself on the floor. And then I had to clear it up. So I thought, I'm not risking it again.
That's funk.
Yeah. I had no idea. When I got back on Instagram about 4 years ago, I had no idea that there was even people still listening to that early stuff. I'm still in a state of shock. No, but I've grown to appreciate certain aspects of it. As far as my voice went, it was totally uninhibited.
Yeah.
And I really didn't think what an audience might think if they had to listen to it. It was just very spontaneous, and I guess that's what some people like about it. I would have liked to have had the opportunity to have recorded some of those vocals more than just the first take.
I think that's a fair ask.
Aerosol Burns, that was literally first take. But that's how it was.
What are you most excited about with the new Land of Kali album?
I love this album. I like it so much because it was on my own terms.
Yeah.
It was just me, a garage band for most of lockdown, with a few people sending parts online, surprise parts to the song. I started initially with Hare in his studio, his bedroom studio, but then lockdown kicked in. I had to learn how to use a computer, and just having the facility of being able to record 100 saxophone tracks if I wanted, or as many vocal parts as I wanted. I got into deep water with that as well because I didn't have editing skills, so I'd end up with 100 tracks, and then youth engineer would say to me, "You can't do this. You can't make 100 saxophone tracks. You can't send me 50 vocal parts." So I had to call Apple support and figure out what to do. But it was just having that bit to be able to record what I wanted, when I wanted, the complete antithesis of, how it was before, where you had to pay a lot of money per hour in some recording studio. It was just a luxury of being able to stop when you wanted to stop. When it was right, it was how I heard it in my head. That was it. I finished. That was such a luxury. It was really nice to be able to do that.
Can you talk a bit about making that video for the first single, Alien Boys? Because it's so kind of 2002 in its color and sensibility, and you were having so much fun. I just really, really like it.
Yeah, me too. I've had the great fortune to meet another Krishna devotee who's just a music video genius. He stays up all night. Oh, but not say that. Yeah, anyway, he's amazing. And we started collaborating after Prayer for Peace was recorded. That was the first song to be recorded from the new album. I met Kavi, and because he thought it'd be a good idea to have a video for Prayer for Peace. So I was introduced to Kavi, and we started collaborating together, and it was lockdown. So he just gave me, sorry, I'm talking about Prayer for Peace now, but basically the first video we collaborated on, he just gave me instructions. Just sitting, I never made a video before. I didn't even know much about selfies or sitting in front of the phone. I only just got a mobile phone. So he said, put your phone on a tripod, you're on a carpet, and look this way and look that way. And I don't know if you've seen that video yet.
No, because you just emailed it to me today, this morning.
Oh,
I saw the Alien Boys one.
I don't want to spoil the fun, but basically I'm sitting on a magic carpet. So he told me, you're sitting on the magic carpet and you look this way and you look that way. And then he just put my little bit of home filming into this incredible scenario way above the clouds. But Alien Boys was the first video that we made in a proper film studio. We went 2 or 3 days. I went with Kavi, he directed it, and he wrote the script, he wrote the moves based around the song, and we filmed it all pretty much in one day. And Kurt Pagan Davis, he arranged the whole thing for us. He's my manager, and he manages the Lora Logic project. So it was amazing to be in a proper film studio and do things nicely. We had so much fun. Caddy played the alien. He played 1,000 aliens. He's pretty larger than life anyway. And it was lovely to work with my daughter, flying through spaceships and all of that. It was great. It was so much fun.
This episode is dropping during Thanksgiving, and I just want to thank you for so much joy that your music has brought me over the years, and the fact that you kind of are inspired my name. We're running out of time, Ms. Logic. What has been your favorite part of this interview?
Oh, well, you asked me to do an interview about 2.5 years ago, and you know, coming out of the cupboards, just coming back into music and appearing in front of an audience. I was too shy. I couldn't accept your proposal 2.5 years ago. My favorite bit is that you've just made me feel relaxed and easy, and your questions have been perfect. Yeah, it's been super fun, super enjoyable.
You are welcome.